Hello, my name is Jenny Vasquez, and I am the Standard English Learner Coordinator here in Local District Northeast. And I, along with Anna Argo, Elementary English Learner Coordinator, Cynthia Diaz, Elementary and Secondary English Learner Coordinator, and Jaime Doñate, Secondary English Learner Coordinator, welcome you to our ELD MELD lessons for weeks 1 and 2, August 20th through August 28th. Our purpose and goal for these first 2 weeks of combined ELD and MELD lessons is to lead with language. We will begin this overview in our Schoology group, our LD&E, Elementary Instruction group. I am in the resources, and there are 2 ways to access our teacher materials. The first is through the teacher materials. And here you will see a link to where you can get a copy of the entire 2 weeks lesson. You will also have a link to the teacher plan book, which I will show you at the end of this video. You have a link to our Schoology group codes, and then finally a folder with all the content video overviews. The other way that you can get your materials is with the student course materials. Here, not only does it provide student with each day's lesson and assignment if there's one assigned that day, but it is also how you as the teacher can present and share your lesson on Zoom. This is so very exciting. So if I look at Tuesday, I will see a class time folder and an assignments folder. In the class time folder is where I will find the presentation. It's all there for you in one neatly organized Schoology package. When I click on the ELD MELD, the presentation is there. And you will be able to click through and teach right from here. But now I'd like to take you to take a look at a sample day and then an overview of the first 2 weeks. Before we begin, we have provided a suggested schedule because one of the major goals of both ELD and MELD is to provide opportunities for our students, both ELs and SELs, to develop language. Our model is as follows. Begin whole group for 15 minutes. We then move into a small group for 25 minutes. How many groups you see in a day will depend on how many groups you have, where your students are with constructive conversations, and how quickly your students are able to move through the small group conversation slides. But within that small group, you will have a constructive conversation around a visual text, and then around a text, which in our case will be video texts, and then there is a writing task. You will then bring everybody back for a whole group 5-minute debrief. Again, this is just suggested, and we know that you will make the best decision as to how you move from whole group to small group to then a very quick whole group at the end. But the goal is to be able to provide that small group instruction where each student can have the opportunity to have conversation, something that doesn't always happen when we are in a large group. Here is another view of how this is happening. Again, you have your whole group in your Zoom room. You will then send all the students to the waiting room and remind them that they are not going to log off Zoom, but instead, if, for example, you have 3 groups, 2 of the groups will be doing their asynchronous work on the language choice board, and then you will bring back your first group from the waiting room into the main Zoom room for a small group constructive conversation for about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, depending upon how many groups you have. You will then bring back the entire class back into the Zoom room with you for that quick debrief and closing before you end your ELD MELD language block. And now let's get into what a sample day looks like. Each day will begin with this title slide. We know that we are in whole group day 1. You will then share the learning goal for the day, share the norms for the learning time together, and do the inclusion. We want to build community from the very beginning. During these times, it is of the utmost importance that we take time to do these inclusions to build the relationships needed to build trust, rapport, and respect. And we always provide a sentence frame to support all our language learners. We then introduce a few participation protocols to be used during both whole group time and small group time. In the first few days, you will see a blue rectangle around the one we will be using that day. In this case, raise a righteous hand. However, as we move forward to the other days, the blue rectangle is no longer there, as by that time, they will have learned all 3 protocols, and any or all may be used during the language development block. Slides 8 through 23 have the constructive conversation skills. 3 slides for each skill. The first slide shows the conversation norms and the conversation skills, the posters that our students may be familiar with. We shall review these with the students on the very first day and all throughout our first 2 weeks together. There's an opportunity to watch the conversation norms video, and then we have the constructive conversations again, where we are attaching a little icon to each skill. The first of the 3 slides that goes with each skill is this one. It shows the constructive conversation poster with the skill highlighted with the red rectangle. It tells us what we're doing when we create, and then it's showing the hand gestures or arm movements of that skill. The next slide has the prompt starters and the response starters. Again, we see the poster, and this time we see the little icon. The final of the 3 slides that go with each skill shows the listening tasks that each student should ask themselves as they are listening to their classmates. Each skill, like I said, has 3 slides. We have added a visual text to practice the constructive conversation skills with your students. Depending upon your grade level and your students' familiarity with the constructive conversation skills, this may be an introduction or a review of using the skills. We see the prompts, what is happening in this visual text, and what makes you say that. This comes after we have just reviewed or introduced our constructive conversation skills. Here, we have instructions on how to get to the language choice board. Step 1, they will be in the Zoom waiting room because this will be small group time. Step 2, they will access the Schoology class course. Step 3, they will go into the materials for the correct week and day. They will see these 2 choices, class time and assignments. Step 4, they're going to choose assignments, and the ELD MELD choice board will be there for them to access. The next slide provides a bigger picture of the language choice board, and when you click here to the choice board, and it will take you to each one. The students will see what they need to do. Here they need to listen and respond, draw or write your favorite part. They click here to go back to the choice board and choose something else to do. In order to be able to see your small groups and engage in those constructive conversations, the Zoom waiting room will need to be utilized. It is extremely important to let the students know that they will not be logging off of Zoom, but will be in the waiting room working on this choice board. The pink slide signals the small group portion of the slide deck. We have the constructive conversation, norms and skills posters to remind our students. We then have the skills with the mini icons as a support for our students. During the small group time, after the review of the constructive conversation skills, we begin with a discussion around a visual text. In this case, we are using the visual text from the book Alma and How She Got Her Name. As you can see, support for our language learners is given in the form of sentence frames and starters. You will display the image for the students and ask the students this guiding question. What is happening in this visual text? Ask the students that question and provide 30 seconds to a minute of quiet think time before eliciting responses. You want to remind students to use the sentence frames when responding and encourage them to build on the ideas of others. Asking a simple question like, "What makes you say that?" to extend student thinking or modeling for students your own thoughts about the image. Using these sentence frames to articulate these thoughts can encourage them along the way. As we move on to the next slide, we have the video text. As students get ready to listen to the video read aloud, have them consider the guiding question displayed on the slide. Play the video read aloud and then have students share their thoughts and evidence around the guiding question. Use the questions on the slide to guide students to cite evidence from the text and remind students to use the sentence frames when responding and encourage them to build on the ideas of others. After the discussion around the visual and video texts, we have the writing task. Here we now invite students to reflect on the image in writing. Review the writing task with the students. In this case, how did you get your name? Ask a family member to help you. And provide 2 to 3 minutes for students to think about their response using the sentence frame as their guide. They may want to ask the teacher or an adult for support. Once students have had a chance to gather their ideas, elicit responses orally from the group. Students may then draw or write their response and share on camera or upload to Schoology as an assignment. For the first week, showing their work on camera will be okay. We will not be uploading any assignments during the first 2 weeks of instruction. The teacher can also model an example for students as needed. Every lesson concludes with this slide, where we thank our students for their hard work and for being respectful and independent learners. The same pattern continues for the first 2 weeks. Here's whole group, learning goals, norms, inclusion, participation protocols, call and response in this case, and then we go through all the constructive conversation skills. And as you get to know your students, you will know to spend more time on certain skills, or it may be that you are reviewing with your students these skills. We then see, again, the pattern, visual text, video text, a writing task, and we end the day. Like I said, this pattern continues for the rest of that second week. The objectives, again, of this ELD MELD block are to provide multiple focused lessons around constructive conversations while infusing social emotional learning and culturally and linguistically responsive pedagogy. I want to take you back to the teacher plan book. Please remember to visit the teacher plan book for resources and tutorials for each content area. The tabs at the top are the front matter that will support your daily teaching. You can click on a tab and it will take you to that page. The tabs on the side are the different content areas, and you can click on there to see a scope and sequence of the first 5 weeks. Weeks 1 and 2 have already been provided, and weeks 3 to 5 will be added incrementally 1 week at a time into Schoology. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this overview. Have a great start to this new school year.